Hey guys, welcome back to another wild neighborhood revenge story. And this one honestly sounds fake until you realize there were police reports, witnesses, and one extremely humiliated woman sitting in the dirt holding her hand like electricity had personally insulted her. My grandfather spent 50 years building a quiet life for himself, and one delusional neighbor almost destroyed that peace because she convinced herself his backyard belonged to her. The crazy part? She could have walked away at any point, but instead she grabbed an electric fence with both hands in front of her own son. Yeah, that happened. So let me set the scene for you. My grandfather, we'll call him Walter, lived in the same little house for most of his life, out in this quiet town where everybody knows each other's business whether they admit it or not. Nothing fancy about the place, just a modest home, a vegetable garden, chickens wandering around like tiny unpaid employees, and a workshop in the back that constantly smelled like motor oil and old metal. Walter was one of those old-school mechanics who could repair basically anything. Tractors, generators, broken pumps, rusted engines that looked like they belonged in a museum. Somehow he'd get them running again. He wasn't loud, wasn't aggressive, never argued with people. Honestly, the man handled stress like a Buddhist monk trapped inside a mechanic's body. That's important later, because the woman who moved in behind him clearly mistook silence for weakness. At first, she seemed normal enough. Introduced herself politely, brought over baked bread, smiled a lot. The usual neighbor stuff. Walter welcomed her, told her if she ever needed help fixing anything around the house, she could just knock on the door. Big mistake. Within maybe 2 months, the complaints started rolling in nonstop. First, it was the garden. Your flowers attract bugs. Then it was the chickens. They wake me up too early. Then somehow the apple tree became a problem because its shadow crossed into her yard in the afternoon. Lady, that tree was older than your marriage probably. Walter tried to keep things civil. He moved the compost farther away from the fence, adjusted equipment in the workshop so it made less noise, even relocated the chicken coop farther from her side of the property. Didn't matter. Every time he solved one issue, she invented another one. You know those people who seem emotionally allergic to peace? That was her. Like she physically needed conflict to survive. And then one day things got weird. Walter came home from town and found her standing inside his backyard. Not near the gate, not leaning over the fence. Actually inside the yard, casually walking around his tomato plants like she was inspecting real estate she planned to buy. When he asked what she was doing, she looked at him completely serious and said, "I'm making sure your garden isn't crossing onto my property." Now most people would have lost their minds right there. But Walter just calmly told her she shouldn't enter somebody else's yard without permission. She rolled her eyes and left. Except, she kept coming back. Over the next several months she turned trespassing into a personality trait. Sometimes she'd appear near the fence pretending to inspect boundaries. Other times she'd wander all the way to the workshop windows and stare inside. One neighbor swore they saw her climbing over the fence while Walter was away visiting family. And the creepy part was how confident she acted. She didn't sneak around like someone doing something wrong. She walked around his property like she genuinely believed she owned it. Then came the day she finally admitted what was going on in her head. Walter caught her stretching a tape measure across the back section of his yard. He asked what she was doing and she goes, "This land actually belongs to me. Your fence is built on my property." Imagine hearing that after living somewhere for over 50 years. The woman claimed the real estate agent told her the boundary line extended several meters farther than where Walter's fence stood. According to her, he'd basically stolen part of her backyard decades ago. Complete nonsense. Walter had every legal document imaginable. Property surveys, land records, old permits, updated registrations, all of it. The fence had been standing there longer than she'd probably been alive. But she didn't care. And once she convinced herself she was right, she escalated fast. She started moving gardening tools away from her side. One afternoon, she ripped out wooden stakes supporting Walter's tomato plants because apparently the tomatoes were trespassing now too. Walter woke up from a nap, walked outside, and found half his plants collapsed in the dirt while she stood there holding the stakes like she'd won a military campaign. "What are you doing?" he asked. "These structures are on my property," she snapped back. Structures. Lady was talking about tomato stakes like they were illegal buildings. At this point, the neighbors started paying attention. The older couple across the street admitted they'd seen her hopping the fence multiple times. Another neighbor said she'd tried convincing people Walter stole land from her. Nobody believed her. One guy literally told her, "That fence has been there since before I had gray hair." Apparently she didn't appreciate that answer. Now here's the thing about Walter. He never exploded when he got angry. He got quieter. And honestly, that's scarier. When I was younger, he used to tell me, "Never argue with fools loudly. Let them defeat themselves." So while this woman was running around with tape measures and imaginary property claims, Walter was preparing. First thing he did was order a fresh property survey from the local land office. Engineers came out, checked the boundaries officially, and confirmed exactly what everybody already knew. Not only was the fence legally his, it was actually built slightly inside his own property line, meaning he'd technically been giving her extra space this entire time. That part still kills me. Then he made copies of all the paperwork and filed them everywhere possible. After that, he called me. A week later, I helped him install security cameras around the backyard. Nothing complicated, just enough to catch every time she climbed over the fence pretending she was some kind of suburban explorer. And then came Walter's masterpiece, the electric fence. Now before anyone panics, this wasn't some deadly horror movie setup. He researched everything first. Legal voltage, approved equipment, warning signs, proper installation, all completely within regulations. Farmers used similar systems all the time. The shock wouldn't seriously hurt anybody, but it would absolutely ruin your confidence. Walter spent almost 2 weeks installing it perfectly. Clean wiring, proper grounding, warning signs everywhere. The man treated that fence like an engineering project for NASA. He even tested it on himself first. I asked him later if it hurt. He took a sip of tea and said, "Enough to make good decisions. I swear old men from that generation are built differently." Then he placed giant yellow warning signs all over the fence. Warning: electric fence. Impossible to miss. Naturally, the neighbor completely lost her mind. She stormed onto Walter's porch screaming that the fence was illegal, dangerous, abusive, insane. Honestly, she sounded like someone arguing with customer service after causing her own problem. Walter sat there calmly in his chair and said one sentence. "Then don't touch it." That somehow made her even angrier. For about a week, nothing happened. She paced around on her side of the fence glaring at the signs, but she stayed out of the yard. Honestly, I thought maybe reality had finally reached her. Nope. One Saturday morning, I was over helping Walter repair some plumbing when we heard shouting outside. We walked into the backyard, and there she was standing by the fence with her adult son beside her. And man, that poor guy looked exhausted before the conversation even started. You could instantly tell he'd spent years apologizing for his mother's behavior. She was ranting while pointing aggressively at the warning signs. "He's threatening me. This isn't legal. He stole our property." Her son looked skeptical, but she kept going louder and louder. feeding off her own outrage like an engine revving too hard. Then she looked directly at Walter and said, "You think fake signs are going to scare me? This fence isn't even real." And before anybody could respond, she grabbed the top rail with her entire hand. Not a quick touch, a full confident grip. I will never forget what happened next. Her whole body snapped backward instantly. She let out this short, shocked scream, stumbled over herself, and fell flat onto the dirt in her own backyard. Dead silence. Even the birds stopped making noise for a second. She sat there stunned, clutching her hand while staring at the fence like it had betrayed her personally. Hair messed up, dirt on her skirt, pure disbelief written all over her face. Her son just froze. You could literally see him questioning every life decision that led to this exact moment. And Walter didn't move an inch, arms crossed, calm expression, silent, like a retired cowboy watching somebody lose a fight with gravity. I nearly bit through the inside of my cheek trying not to laugh. Then came the meltdown. She started screaming that Walter assaulted her, pulled out her phone, called the police right there while still covered in dirt from losing a fistfight against basic warning signs. When the officers arrived, she launched into this dramatic performance about illegal traps and dangerous behavior and stolen property. The officers listened. Then they checked the signs, checked the fence, checked the paperwork, checked the security footage. And suddenly her confidence disappeared real fast. One officer finally told her, "Ma'am, the fence is legal, and according to these cameras, you are trespassing." You know those moments where someone realizes the universe isn't backing them up anymore? That was her face. The cops warned her officially that if Walter wanted to press charges, he had more than enough evidence to do it. They told her to stop entering his property immediately. And just like that, the whole fantasy collapsed. The story spread through town in like 2 days. Everybody knew what happened. Not her version either, the real version. She became the woman who electrocuted herself arguing with a fence. Honestly, there's no recovering from a nickname like that. But here's the twist nobody expected. About a month later, her son came back alone carrying pastries from a bakery in the city. He apologized to Walter for everything and admitted his mother had become obsessed with the property idea after hearing bad information from somebody. Years earlier. Then he quietly said something I still think about. She always assumes if someone stays calm, they're weak. Walter looked at him for a second and said, "That's why calm people surprise her." That was it. No victory speech. No dramatic revenge movie ending. Just quiet truth. A few months later, she sold the house and moved away. And honestly, the street felt peaceful again almost immediately. But sometimes I still wonder what would have happened if Walter hadn't documented everything. No cameras, no paperwork, no warning signs. Because people like that rely on confusion. They rely on decent people getting tired first. Instead, she picked a fight with an old mechanic who understood patience better than anybody I've ever met. And in the end, she lost an argument to a fence. So now I gotta ask, was Walter justified? Or did installing the electric fence go too far even if it was legal? Because half the people I tell this story to think it was genius, and the other half think he humiliated her on purpose. Drop your opinion in the comments because honestly, I still can't decide which part was crazier, the trespassing, or the fact she grabbed a clearly labeled electric fence with full confidence in front of witnesses.